Oh,
Better?
Oh,
Yeah, and I'll get this.
Now we're the same height.
So here's the dirty little secret. You got to do everything. If you're going to do a podcast, you got to push all the buttons.
Really? Oh, exciting.
Find all the exciting people. Welcome to Inside Look. I'm Jeff Lyons, joined today by the Executive Director of Autism Everyone, Kelsey Schapker. How are you,
Jeff.
Kelsey?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having us.
Oh, we're glad to have you on. And, you know, of course, you get special treatment because you're a 14 alum, right? It seems like everybody I talk to has worked at the station in one lifetime or another. What did you do here again?
Oh, gosh, that was a whole lifetime ago. That was pre-kids.
Yeah, right.
Let's see. Web producer. So like all the content on the website, well, in the olden days,
right,
you had to write all that. And so I was one who did that.
They still write quite a bit of it too. Yeah. So some things haven't changed. So you went off, had a family.
That's right.
And now today we find you as the Executive Director of Autism Everyone. Used to be Autism Evansville, right?
That's right.
And it's
That's right.
Expanded a little bit.
It has.
And so I wanted to talk about kind of your journey from here through family and into the nonprofit realm, because that's quite an arc.
Yes,
a story arc.
Yes.
So tell me about your family.
Sure. Let's see. My husband and I have been married we've been together for 16 years, and we had a difficult time having children. And so once we had them, I became a stay-at-home mom for 6.5 years, which worked out very well because my son is actually on the spectrum. His name is Camden. And then we have a daughter who is not on the spectrum. So two different experiences all around.
It's really a weird experience. And we share that, other than both working at Channel 14, I stayed here, though, we both have children, adult children in my case, who are on the spectrum. My son Patrick is on the spectrum. And we did not know that until he was almost 2 years old. We knew things were not progressing maybe as they should, but he was the first kid. So then when you have number two, in our case, and three, you're like, oh my gosh, how did we miss it? So what was your first inkling that maybe something wasn't quite right?
You hit the nail on the head. About that 18-month mark, really everything switched for us. I really describe it as a light switch went off, and he had everything one day, and then the next day he didn't. He lost his speech. He lost his ability to eat like all his favorite foods. His eye contact just stopped. He started stimming, playing with toys inappropriately, and I was like, oh, what in the world's going on here?
Yeah.
It was just almost instant for us.
That is, that's different from our experience, which we never saw a loss of abilities. We never saw the abilities gained, or at least not in a timely way. So you're saying Camden probably pulled up and walked at 1 or whatever the regular time is, right? And think like milestones were reached.
Right.
And then it was gave them all back.
Yeah, it was regression. Just that 18-month mark, it was just instant regression. And it was heartbreaking, really.
Well, of course, it's heartbreaking. Yeah. And it's, as a parent, you know, you could probably identify with that. You're like, well, what did I do wrong, or what are we missing here? And then there's you look at the future, which can be bleak. You know, if you don't know that there are resources out there,
right?
And so I'm guessing now. I'm not, I forecast weather. I can guess that pretty well. But
You're
I'm
pretty
guessing
good at that.
This probably had something to do then with your involvement with Autism Evansville.
It did. And so let's see. I was a stay-at-home mom for 6.5 years, and then about the year 2021, I started volunteering with the organization. They were without an ED at the time. And then in 2022, I said, hey, you guys are without an ED. And they said, well, we have a fundraiser in 6 weeks, and if you can put it on well,
That's right. Show me the money.
Yeah.
Right?
And I said, well, let's do it. And that was that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back to, I didn't mean to fast forward past your family portion of it. So when you had your daughter, then, and of course you're thinking everything goes normally at 18 months. I'm sure you were holding your breath.
Oh, absolutely. And I remember we actually went to a doctor appointment for her 1-year checkup. And I remember our pediatrician, she looked at Kendi, my daughter, and she said, oh, there's no autism there. And I was like, oh, okay. And it solidified the fact that we are living two different experiences.
Yeah.
And I also remember her first word was ball, and Camden never said the word ball, as strange as that sounds.
That is odd.
Babies babble and mama, dad, the whole night. And ball I was like, well, I don't think she's on the spectrum, because she's, talking and developing and not losing it like Camden did.
So at 18 months, where did you get your official diagnosis from? Did it come from a pediatrician, a neurologist, or how did that happen?
We went to our pediatrician, and of course, you fill out the paperwork of, is your child doing this, this, and this? And of course, for us, it was questions 1 through 20. No, I circled no for everything. And so she really encouraged us to get a diagnosis. And so we did. I did wait about 2 years, honestly. And looking back, that's just the time I needed to kind of grasp what we were about to go through.
Yeah.
And then he got his official diagnosis from Brain Power Neurodevelopmental Center out in Newburgh with Dr. Catherine Morton, and she hit the nail on the head. Level 2 autism spectrum disorder, along with some other diagnoses as well.
Sure. And at the time, and again, not to horn in on your story, but just as a contrast to the years. So Patrick was born in 1993, and at that time, autism spectrum disorder did not exist in the DSM or whatever the psychological thing is. And so while there were autistic qualities, there were also some other things that didn't line up. And so in our experience, and we had really good pediatricians, but they were like, well, let's wait. Don't worry about it. Let's wait. And there wasn't, I don't think, at least in our experience, as much proactiveness now.
Sure,
like this could be an issue.
Yeah.
And for us, it was a trip to the rehabilitation center and a meeting with a pediatric neurologist who had clinic there every so often, a guy by the name of Dr. Harvey Cantor out of St. Louis. And he came in, it was a 2-hour evaluation. And that's when we had our heartbreak, because then he laid it right on the line. And you know what? That was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Almost everything he said has pretty much played out. And actually, you know, in the realm, in the spectrum, so to speak, our situation is very good. He's able to be somewhat independent. He's verbal and is able to hold a job and so forth. But when you're sitting in that room, you can't picture that.
Yeah.
But where are you in the journey now? How old's Camden?
Oh,
I should have done my math. You told me when he was born.
So let's see. Camden is getting ready to turn 10 this summer, and we really had it rough those first few years. And I always tell our families that, you know, under the age of 5 and 6 is the hardest with autism. And for us, Camden was nonverbal for 3 years. He didn't say a word. He didn't utter a word. And then, of course, we started speech therapy at Easter Seals, First Steps, you know, all of that. And then, so he'll be 10 this summer. He's verbal now. He is in 3rd grade at a local elementary school, and he's doing great. He's graduated all of the special education classrooms. I mean, we did special education up until this year. So, I mean, we had it rough. Yeah.
So is he doing pull-out now where he's pulled out for subjects, or is he simply in all the time?
No, he's gen ed with resource support is what they call it.
Resource
so so pulled out for like spelling is his struggle point.
So when you came in then to Autism Evansville, then you realize where Camden is relative to many other people who are in that same boat, but at much different levels.
So my husband and I, we actually received Camden's diagnosis over a Zoom call while we were in the parking lot of a church because it was COVID. It was 2020. And the world was shut down. So we were not allowed to meet with the doctor one-on-one. So we actually got those results over a Zoom call. And I remember looking at Chris and I said, where are all the families like ours? We cannot be the only family. And that was back in 2020. So people just weren't talking about it back then like they are now.
Yeah. And, and it was really, I think that's, and I wanted to touch on that at some point. I think we're getting to it right now. The network that you develop with other parents, whether in our case it's been through Special Olympics, and prior to that it was parents of the kids in special education, and you realize then, of course, you're not alone, and it seems like that's where a lot of the valuable information changes hands.
Absolutely.
Like, well, how do you apply for Social Security, or how do you get this service? Oh, I didn't know that existed.
Right.
So how did you kind of get the piecemeal, because everybody starts out that way. Well, unless they contact Autism Everyone, then it's kind of a one-stop shop. I looked at your website, and it's like, man, if that had been around in '93, I would have felt a lot better, because step by step, what do you do with the diagnosis and so forth.
You're walking right into what I'm about to say. I love it.
So talk about that.
So one of the very first things that I did when I accepted the role at Autism Evansville at the time, I created what's called an Autism Spectrum Disorder Starter Packet, and it's steps 1 through 4 that, quite frankly, I wish that my husband and I would have had. And it would have taken away some of that grief, because you do grieve the life that you thought you were going to be living.
Exactly.
No one also talks about the emotional impact on the parents and what it does to them and, their marriage and the deep trauma that comes with that as well. So creating that steps 1 through 4 and being able to hand it to families that are freshly diagnosed, especially now that we've changed our name to Autism Everyone, we're touching families in Illinois, northern Indiana, Southwest Kentucky. So they're able to follow that step 1 through 4 as well.
Mm-hmm. What behaviors, and again, you can go on the website and look, but what behaviors did you know? You talked about loss of abilities like speech and so forth. Did you have the other things like, like a lot of kids with autism will line things up?
Oh, yeah.
Line their toys up, and they're very, some are very, very particular about routine, the clock, and things like that. Of course, you run into all of these things, I'm sure.
Yes.
What do you say to parents? Well, maybe that's something you need to look into. Or have you ever had that conversation with a parent?
Really, I think the parents have to ask us. So, when they answer when I answer the phone, I don't ever tell them about Camden. They're not calling to talk about Cam. And just being able to say, are you guys experiencing this, this, and this? And they'll say yes. And I'll say, have you ever thought about seeking out a diagnosis? Because maybe it's not autism. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's nothing at all. It's, obviously that's what the professionals are for.
Right. So. And of course, there's so much information on the internet now. A lot of people want to diagnose there, and that's the wrong place to go. It'll keep you up all night.
And I always tell our families the worst thing you can do is Google an autism diagnosis, because the old saying, once you've met someone with autism, you've met one person with autism. Because everyone's so different.
It's so different with each person. And that's, we were talking about this actually before we turned the microphones off. Even today, in what I would consider to be a far more accepting society of people who are different in whatever way, you'll still get that question, well, what's wrong with so-and-so? And, you kind of have to have a pat answer. You can't get offended because, after all, it's a moment you can teach somebody. You can say, hey, it is different, and this is why.
Right.
You don't want to go into too much detail.
Right.
And my experience has been people will generally accept that. What's your experience been with that?
A lot of my families know this, that I'm a very tough advocate. I'm not afraid to push back. And I think our standard sentence, at least for our house, with our personal family, is that he's on the spectrum. Something that, your family knows, the siblings. Our daughter is really starting to be aware, and now she will notice strangers maybe staring or, whatever they shouldn't be doing. And she even will notice, like, hey, Mom, the stranger's looking at us. Do you want to say anything? And it's like, you do have to decide.
Well, but there are times when any kid will act out in public, and cause a scene. It seems to be like when they like to do it when they're young. At Walmart, or the grocery store, church, something like that.
Yep.
And sometimes, you have to, I guess you don't have to explain yourself. It's no one's business. But on the other hand, I think for the inclusion, you need to try to get some understanding going out there. But it is hard to explain. We can't explain a lot of those things. So you get Autism Everyone going. You got a lot of stuff going on.
I know.
Now, and this will not run before the Autism Walk on Saturday, which is the Saturday out at the 4-H Center. But you've had initiatives with the airport, with travel, and you think of all the things there.
Yes.
In schools, you work with the police department on how to handle individuals on the spectrum.
Fire department as well.
Fire department.
Great relationship with the EFD.
Which one do you want to talk about? Is this like a buffet? I can choose any topic.
I know.
We'll talk about the travel one. I always thought that was interesting. You bring a plane in and you taxi around and all that stuff, right? Is that the same one, or is that a different one?
So I know Autism Society of Indiana, they
did that.
They do the practice airplane.
Right.
Not enough pilots, I think, out at Evansville Regional Airport. Although we're pushing for that, but those discussions are still in the works. But one of the big things that Autism Everyone did was that we put out sensory kits to individuals, like different organizations. And so when these first responders or even individuals at the airport come across someone with autism, whether that's an adult or a child, they have all kind of sensory tools that they need to help that individual de-stress from a sensory meltdown. And just being able to train different first responders, whether it's EFD or Evansville Police Department or out at the Vandenberg County Sheriff's Office, we do training out there as well. And everyone has just been so open and receptive. And I know that those sensory kits are being used.
And it's not always apparent that an individual has autism. You can't always just tell by looking.
Right.
And so that can create problems. I've
Right.
often thought of that in our case with my son. And I think, and of course, when it's your kid, you see him as your kid. You don't really see the disability, so to speak. But so you never know how just a random person is. But like in going through airport security just a couple weeks ago, he didn't quite understand the whole, what you have to do and why and what not to say. But the TSA agents seemed to sense that something was a kilter here, and they were so kind, So we were lucky. That's not always the case. Some people are like, "Hey, buddy, what's going on here?"
Yeah.
So these initiatives, I think, the goal is to get people to
just talk about it.
Talk about it.
Talk about it. Be aware. Know what to do. Know what to do when someone's going through a sensory meltdown. Know what to say to the parents. Know what to do to help the parents. Quite frankly, maybe they just need to get out the door if they're at the grocery store. They just need help getting to their car. So they can't carry their kid and push the cart. So sometimes it's just pushing the cart out to the car. It's just anything you can do to help.
Talk a little bit about your parent support group. You all meet different places and talk and stuff. Were you part of one of those before you became who you are today?
Yeah.
I don't mean it that way. I mean,
no,
before you were
I know
in
what you
charge
mean.
of
No.
Autism Evansville.
Yeah, I don't really tell our story anymore. I instead we meet for those parents to grieve, and there's a lot of laughter and a lot of tears, and that's what they're for. We'll meet at different restaurants throughout the tri-state, a couple times a year, and then just getting that off your chest and being able to go home and sleep at night and talk to someone about it. Just talk to someone.
People really can't understand if they haven't been on the inside. It's just a much different existence, and of course, you're in it, so you don't really know any different, right? I mean, it's just this is how it is, and but describing it then to someone else, which is a rare. People don't usually ask, and we don't usually volunteer, but there is a lot that goes on that I think a group, like Autism. Everyone, formerly Evansville, is able to kind of allay those fears. But where do you see it going? I mean, it seems like every time you send a press release, you got another thing coming, another program.
I know.
What would you like to see in perfect world?
Oh, we have big dreams, Jeff.
I know.
We're working on those.
Are you going to tip your hand here on Inside Look? Give me an exclusive?
You know what? I will. When the time is right.
Yeah.
We're working on it.
Okay.
Just know that we're working on it.
Well, you have my number, so you can come back on here.
I will.
What's been the biggest thing you've learned, maybe that you didn't understand about autism, now that you're, dealing with so many different families and different projects?
That two things can be true at the same time. That grief and joy can coexist. Because I love the work that we do at Autism Everyone. I love the families that we serve. I love my own family, raising a neurotypical daughter and then a neurodivergent son. It couldn't be any more different, but it's hard. It's hard, and it's okay to say that it's hard.
Yeah.
And that's always what I'm encouraging our families. It's okay to say that it's hard. It doesn't mean you don't love your child any less. It's also okay to take time to grieve. The life that you thought you were going to be living of sports and this, that, and the other. And instead, maybe you're doing speech therapy or occupational therapy, developmental preschool. I could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
And, you're living a life that, quite frankly, you may have not known anything about before your child was diagnosed. And it just takes time to learn the child that you have.
Yeah, it is an entirely different, I won't say subculture. That makes it sound like it's less, but
It's a
you know what I mean? It's a
world.
different world.
It
Yeah,
is.
it is. It really is. In my experience, a lot of individuals with autism are fixated on weather.
Oh, really?
They are.
I like
and
that.
I'm not sure what it is about weather. I think it's, of course, numbers driven. It is, somewhat cyclical. In fact, I was at a school for special needs students over in Illinois, Brownsville Attendance Center. And every kid in that school, age, I think that is second grade up through 22 years of age,
Love that.
is either somewhere on the spectrum or has a disability. Now, that's kind of counter to the current education where you
Right.
mix everybody
Right.
together,
Integrated.
inclusion,
Yep.
right, or
Yep.
integrated.
Yep.
But on the other hand, then you have everybody that's specialized in that all under one roof. And I would say maybe I did a whole school assembly on weather, and I'd say half of them were absolute. I mean, they were asking me stuff I don't know. It's like, how do you know this?
Yes.
Because they are. That's like a fragmented
Mm-hmm.
ability that they develop. And I think that's one of the fascinating things about autism. That why is there this one thing? Some people it's Civil War. Some people it's. I mean, I'm telling you what you already know here. I don't know why I'm having you on. I should.
It's dinosaurs at our house.
Yeah.
You want to know anything about mosasaurus? Cam can tell you. I mean,
about what?
Mosasaurus, dinosaurs.
Okay.
What they eat, where they live.
Yeah.
So it's dinosaurs at our house.
When did that emerge?
Oh gosh, when he started talking.
Yeah.
Really, when he started talking, when he started gaining those speech skills.
Yeah.
I mean, we did speech therapy at Easter Seals for 7 years. So every Monday I'm spending hours at Easter Seals. You know. So yeah, really, when he gained those speech skills.
So you said Camden is 10, correct?
Okay. Get ready to turn 10. Yeah.
So as we know, but we should talk about, education, at least special education, you fall off a cliff once you get to age 22, right?
Right.
And so what is autism, everyone, what do you do about that aspect of life for individuals?
Sure.
When I say fall off the cliff, the school system no longer will provide an education. In other words, they say, now you're on your own. So there are places, obviously, like Arc of Evansville, the Rehabilitation Center, and many others that do things. But from the autism everyone angle, where do you see there?
That's actually something that our board of directors has really been discussing, because our primary focus and concern has really been the families, those younger families. And that really is something that we're exploring as we grow. Now we've been Autism Everyone for almost a year, and that was kind of the goal. Let's get to the 1 year mark and then explore, new programs, new opportunities. So we definitely have some things in the works that we're working on.
Okay.
But we hear that a lot. Hey, what about us? What about us?
And there is a need there, and I think many of the agencies are looking at, well, how do you feel that need? How do you fill a day if an individual, say, is not able to work or is able to work but can't find a job? There are just a lot of different moving parts in this. I was at another thing, Hope Gallery. I don't know if you've ever been there.
Yes.
And so in their model, what they've done is said, okay, look, you don't have to work at at a restaurant or a store or whatever. Come here and make art, and we'll sell it and offset our overhead. And they're very creative. So there are many, many ways to address the problem that people are just now kind of getting on board with.
And I think the Hope Gallery, that's such a hidden secret. I mean, people don't really know. If you don't live, like you said, if you don't live in the disability world, like you and I do and some of these families do, you don't know about it, right? I mean, what do you know? So that's a very well hidden secret. So love that.
Yeah. How many families do you think you serve right now at Autism Everyone?
We right now in our database, we've got about 1,200 families.
And that's just
states.
Here in the immediate area, right?
Tri-state area, 3 states.
Yeah, and I believe autism, if I remember the statistic, it's like 1 in 30.
31.
I was going to say 3 in 100 or so.
1 in 31.
Yeah, which is
a lot.
Mind-boggling. Yeah,
1 in every classroom. Really. Yeah.
It used to be that developmental disability, it was about 2%. And that initially was our diagnosis, but autism spectrum was in there. So you've seen it too. There's been an increase either in diagnosis or actual cases. We don't really know, because there may be cases that weren't diagnosed, or it wasn't called that back then.
Right.
What do you attribute it? I mean, we don't know, right? If we knew, we wouldn't be doing this. But what do you think's going on?
I really think, quite frankly, people are just more aware.
Yeah.
They're more aware. They're noticing when their child is not meeting those milestones, talking, walking, saying ball. They're not hitting those skills that they should be. Pediatricians are more aware. Pediatricians they've always been willing to write referrals, but now they're on top of the game. They're saying, hey, if your child's not meeting these milestones, we need to go for testing. And I think just a lot more awareness.
Yeah.
I mean, back you said when Patrick was diagnosed, you had to go to a neurologist in St. Louis.
Well, he came to us. I mean, he had clinic hours here, but we had to go to St. Louis on more than one occasion for appointments. So it was, there aren't many, at that time, there were not many pediatric neurologists around.
Right.
And that diagnosis, of course, then is what you take into the school system. And for people that don't know, if your child is in receiving special education, you have to attend a meeting every once a year or twice a year, something like that, called an IEP meeting. And those are no fun.
No, they're not.
They are not.
No, they're not.
Everybody has, it seems at times, competing interests. Everybody wants what's best for the child, but how to do it. And and so that's another hurdle that you navigate, that the parents, especially with your support, can trade notes.
And we really have been pushing our parents to ask the school system, and I'll even do this in our son's IEP meetings, that before the meeting begins, before we look at the charts and the graphics, because seeing your child reduced to a graph on a piece of paper, there's nothing like it. There's nothing more heartbreaking than that. And I always ask them, tell me one good thing about my son that's not school related. What's he doing? Is he kind to his friends? Is he, XYZ? What's he doing?
Yeah.
And so really pushing those parents to kind of advocate for their kid in school. Hey, what is my child doing well right now before we start on this IEP? Tell me one good thing about my child.
You mentioned too, when you get that diagnosis, you pivot from being just a parent to now you're a psychologist, maybe a psychiatrist. Advocate would be the very top thing you have to fight,
right?
And so many other things. I know several families in this world, as we call it, and the amount of documentation they do and observation and research is mind-boggling. It used to be you just dropped your kid off at the Y and
not anymore.
And so it does change for families, but at least Autism Everyone is here to help out.
Yeah. And we're always encouraging our families too. If you haven't started a binder of your child's paperwork, all those IEPs, your doctors, because every time you go to a specialist, they're going to need to see all the history. So you take it, whether it's geneticist or neurology or feeding clinic or whatever. So start that binder, start that paperwork, so you're not searching under your bed or in your filing cabinet or wherever. You've got that big binder.
And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
It gets bigger and bigger as they get older, but at least you have it all in one spot.
Yeah. And just to kind of put at least not a period on the sentence, but so Patrick, in our case, went to public school until he was 22, right? You get it through 21 or your 22nd birthday. And is now able to work in a store. He works at a Schnucks on the west side and at IGA, and has a legion of fans. People know him, and he knows them. And he's become sociable and works. Now, he will probably always live with my wife and me, so that is a different, a different plan than maybe we had, starting out with children. And so there is hope. There is a lot that can be accomplished. And I think a lot of times folks are in despair at that, especially at diagnosis. But it does get better with time.
And we always tell our families too, how your child is at age 3, for example, or age 5 is not how they're going to be at age 10 or 15 or 22.
Right.
You're going to meet different versions of your child on the spectrum, and their skills are going to be different, and their support's going to be different, and their needs are going to be different. So really just always encouraging our families at it as well.
Yeah. All right. Kelsey, anything else? What did I not ask, or what should I ask? What do you want to talk about that we didn't get into?
I think just our Autism Acceptance Month calendar is something different that we're doing this year, just highlighting local agencies. Evansville Fire Department is a great example. We just put yard signs at all their houses with their logo and ours, just supporting autism acceptance all month long. So big shout out to them for letting us do that. Just we've got some different things in the works with different organizations as well, but families can check our Facebook page for that calendar, and lots of different things going on there.
Okay. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate you coming back.
Thanks,
do you want to put a story out on the web as long as you're here? We'll probably find your keyboard.
You can ask, and they'll say yes, I'm sure. So.
All right. Kelsey Schapker with Autism
thanks,
Evansville. I'm Jeff Lyons here. Right. You remember who I am, right?
Yes.
And this has been Inside Look. You can listen to all of our Inside Looks wherever you get your podcast. You can also watch on the 14 News YouTube channel. We have a companion podcast now called What's the Trend with Aaron Weeks and Casey Mason. So it's all going on here. Maybe not as much as it is at Autism Evansville. Now, you got to tell me, I want the exclusive, whatever this thing is, this big announcement is. No,
it's big. But we're working on it.
Right. We'll have the cliffhanger. All right. Thanks, Kelsey, for joining us, and thanks for joining Inside Look.